Mira hadn't planned on staying long. Class reunions were usually overhyped, filled with awkward hugs and people who remembered you too well or not at all. But this one was different. It had been 10 years since she walked across the campus stage with a diploma in hand and a heart full of plans that never quite unfolded the way she thought they would. Eliot, her husband, couldn't make it. A conference on the other coast. Something about supply chain strategy and keynote panels. He had kissed her forehead the morning he left and said, "Have fun, take pictures." She promised she would, and she meant it at the time. The reunion was held at a converted loft downtown, brick walls, Edison lights, faux rustic centerpieces made to feel like memory. Everyone had aged just enough to pretend they hadn't. Mira wore a navy blue dress. Simple but flattering, not too much skin, but not a retreat either. Just enough to say, "I still remember who I used to be." The drinks came quickly, the music was soft enough to talk over, and the room smelled of nostalgia and expensive perfume. There were old friends, forgotten enemies, people whose names she recalled only after a few glasses of wine. They showed her pictures of their kids, talked about divorces, careers that stalled, dreams they'd either abandoned or upgraded. And then Ryan walked in. He hadn't changed much, same lean frame, same crooked smile that used to make her nervous in the best way. His hair was grayer at the temples, his jawline a bit sharper, like time had etched every moment of his becoming. He saw her almost instantly. "Mira," she turned. "Ryan." Just like that, the room melted away. He hugged her, not long, not inappropriate, but enough to remind her body that it once responded to that touch. Enough to make her inhale too deeply, too slowly. They started talking, easy, like old pages reopened, jokes they used to share, teachers they used to mock, nights they used to sneak into libraries just to make out among the shelves. Mira laughed, a little too hard, a little too much. 3 glasses of Merlot in. She found herself leaning closer, not touching, but leaning. Her hand brushed his when she reached for her phone. They both froze, then smiled like teenagers, the kind of smile that said, "We shouldn't," but didn't include the period. When the class photo was taken, they stood beside each other, not because they planned it, because gravity remembers. Someone suggested karaoke at a bar nearby. Mira declined, said she should head home. Ryan said, "Let me walk you to your car, just to make sure you don't get stolen." She laughed, still using that line, only when it might still work. Outside, the air was cooler. She wrapped her arms around herself. Ryan offered his jacket. She declined. He draped it over her anyway. She didn't stop him. They stood by her car for a minute too long. He asked about her life. She gave him curated headlines. Marriage is fine. Work is fine. Things are fine. He didn't press. He just said, "I always thought we had more time." That made her exhale. Everyone thinks that. Then silence. Not awkward, just filled with all the things neither of them said 10 years ago. He stepped closer, just a step. She didn't move. And in that exact moment, Mira felt it. The warm, humming lie of memory, the way nostalgia dresses the past in soft light, the way loneliness makes any attention feel holy. She wasn't in love with Ryan. Not really. She was just tired of being invisible. And the past knows how to knock exactly when the present forgets how to listen. She told herself she was going to leave, that she would open the car door, smile, and drive home. But when Ryan said, "There's a bar 2 blocks down. Just one drink for old time's sake," she hesitated, not because she didn't know the answer, but because she did. And that's how betrayal always begins, not with decision, but with delay, a pause long enough for history to slip a foot in the door. And Mira, smiling in the dark, forgot for one dangerous second that youth doesn't forgive the same way it tempts. She followed him down the sidewalk, not with certainty, but with familiarity, and sometimes that's worse. The hotel lobby was too quiet. It always is after midnight. Mira stood by the elevator, her fingers wrapped around the strap of her purse, unsure if she was waiting for the lift or her conscience to catch up. Ryan had gone ahead, tapping the button with the ease of someone who already knew where this was going. But Mira, she was still on the threshold of excuse and choice. It's just one drink, she had told herself at the bar. And it was. At first, they talked about their old professor who used to forget students' names mid-lecture. About the frozen pizza nights during finals. About the one time they kissed during a blackout. Convinced the power outage was a sign from the universe. Mira laughed more than she meant to. She remembered things she hadn't revisited in years. Ryan watched her like a man watching a favorite movie he never finished. He didn't touch her, not yet, but his eyes told her he might. And more dangerously, her heart told her she might let him. He walked her toward his hotel. Not pushy, not sly, just steady. Mira said no 3 times before the 4th sounded like a maybe. When they reached the door, she told herself again, just a minute, just to sit, to talk, to feel wanted without strings. The room smelled of cologne and freshly laundered sheets. A king-sized bed, one lamp, one truth hiding behind everything unsaid. Ryan poured her a drink, but she didn't touch it. Her hands were too busy clinging to the edges of herself. They sat on opposite ends of the couch. Then closer, then closer still. She didn't plan it. She didn't resist it. The first touch was his hand on her knee. The first betrayal was when she didn't move it away. He looked at her, silently asking. She met his eyes, silently answering. The kiss was soft, familiar, not electric, but warm, like sinking into a bath drawn too hot. Mira thought of Eliot for half a second. Then the thought dissolved into the fabric of the moment. Into fingers tracing her spine. Into a sigh she hadn't let out in months. She wasn't drunk, she wasn't coerced, she was just tired. Tired of being the only one always trying. Tired of brushing past her husband's phone to see the same unspoken gaps. Tired of lying in bed beside a man who hadn't really looked at her in over a year. So when she fell into Ryan, not out of love, not out of lust, but out of ache, it didn't feel like a fall. It felt like rest. Afterward, they lay in the quiet. She pulled the blanket around herself, sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the red digits of the bedside clock. 3:11 a.m. Her phone sat on the nightstand. She picked it up. She didn't look at messages. She didn't check social media. She opened the call log, scrolled, paused, then dialed. The ringing echoed through the tile of a bathroom hundreds of miles away. Eliot answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was groggy. Mira. She didn't speak right away. He waited. Why are you calling so late? She inhaled sharply, already crying. Are you okay? He asked, voice rising. She finally whispered, no. There was silence. And then the quiet, careful question. Did something happen? More tears. A cracked voice. I don't know what's wrong with me. Eliot was quiet for a long moment. Then calmly, if it hurt you that much, why did you still do it? Mira closed her eyes. The question didn't accuse. It didn't burn. It simply landed. And she had no answer. Because some betrayals aren't born from desire. They're born from a moment where you forget who you are. And remember who you used to be. And the cost of that moment is everything that follows. The taxi ride home was silent. Mira sat in the back seat with her hands clenched in her lap. Mascara bleeding at the edges of her eyes. Her skin pale against the dark fabric of her dress. The driver said nothing, just glanced at her through the rearview mirror now and then, perhaps out of concern. Perhaps out of habit. She didn't meet his gaze. She was somewhere else, replaying the night in frames she wanted to burn. 2:34 a.m. Her house was dark. Still, the porch light flickered like it had for weeks, another task Eliot hadn't gotten around to fixing. She let herself in quietly, careful not to let the door creak, even though no one was home. It was instinct, muscle memory from a life built on gentleness. Eliot was still away, a conference in Vancouver. She had texted him earlier in the evening, before the dinner, a photo of her in her dress, captioned with, "Wish you were here." He'd replied with a thumbs up. No words, just a gesture, enough to acknowledge, not enough to connect. Now, the house felt like an echo. Mira walked past the living room, the kitchen, The hallway that led to their bedroom. She didn't go there, couldn't. Instead, she turned to the bathroom, the one off the guest room. She flicked on the light, sat on the edge of the tub, and exhaled for the first time since the door of Ryan's hotel room had clicked shut behind her. The silence was unbearable. She looked at her reflection in the mirror across from the sink. Smudged makeup, bloodshot eyes, a mouth that looked too tired to lie and too broken to speak the truth. She looked like someone she didn't recognize. So she slid down onto the cold tile floor, pulled her knees to her chest, and held the phone in her hand like a confession. She dialed before she thought it through. It rang, once, twice, 3 times. Then, Mira. His voice was heavy with sleep. And something else, uncertainty. Maybe, weariness. She didn't answer right away. Her breath stuttered in her throat. "It's late," Eliot said gently. "Is everything okay?" Her voice cracked. "No." A pause. "What's going on?" Silence. "Mira," he repeated, not impatient, just waiting. And then the words stumbled out. "I messed up." He didn't ask how, didn't ask with who, just silence, a different kind this time. She sobbed quietly, trying to muffle it into her shoulder. He spoke again, more softly now. "Tell me what happened." But she couldn't. "Not really," she said. "I didn't mean to." Another pause. "Didn't mean to, what?" Her silence was the answer. There was a long breath on the other end. Then, "If it hurt you that much, why did you still do it?" Mira broke. She sobbed into the empty space, into the tiles, into the question that sliced sharper than any accusation. She didn't have an answer, not a real one, because it wasn't about Ryan, not fully. It wasn't about Eliot, not only. It was about a moment, a crack in her that widened just enough to let loneliness spill out. She had wanted to feel again, not joy, not passion, just relevance. But all she felt now was small. And Eliot's question, it would stay with her longer than the shame, because it named the part of her that had chosen this, not the part that was weak, but the part that wanted something so badly. She let it erase everything else. On the phone, Eliot whispered, "I need to go." She nodded, even though he couldn't see her. He didn't hang up right away. He waited, gave her the grace she no longer knew what to do with. And then the line went silent. Mira sat there for a long time, the phone screen black, her breathing finally steady, but inside, the question still echoed. "If it hurt you that much, why did you still do it?" And there would never be an answer. Because some betrayals can't be explained, only lived through. Alone, Mira opened the journal she hadn't touched in months. The leather cover felt too warm in her hands. The pages already tinted with older ink, old dreams, old fears, old promises she no longer remembered making. She flipped past them until she found a blank space. She stared at it for a long time before writing anything. And then, with a trembling hand, she began, "I wasn't in love with Ryan. I was in pain with myself." The sentence just sat there, naked, unjustifiable, honest in the way that only shame can be. She tried to explain it, on paper, in her head, even aloud in front of the mirror, but nothing made it sound better. Nothing softened the truth. There were no elaborate betrayals, no months of planning, no flirtation building over time. Just one night, one weak moment, one breath too long held in, followed by one she let out at the wrong time, in the wrong arms. When Eliot returned from his trip, he didn't come with questions. No suitcase full of anger, no confrontation. He entered their home like a guest. Mira had stayed up late the night before he was due, rehearsing her apology, her confession, her plea for forgiveness that she wasn't even sure she deserved. But when he walked through the door, none of it came out. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. He placed his keys in the bowl by the door, took off his shoes, looked at her like she was a stranger standing where his wife used to be. She opened her mouth to speak, but he walked past her, slowly, quietly, and headed upstairs. Not angry, not cold, just distant, the kind of distance that says, "I already know." That night, they didn't sleep in the same bed. Not by decision. It just happened. Mira stayed on the couch with the lights off, the television murmuring something unimportant in the background. Eliot closed the bedroom door behind him without sound. She thought about going to him, crawling into bed beside him and begging for the version of him that used to pull her close no matter what. But she didn't move, because she didn't deserve that version. And maybe, just maybe, he didn't exist anymore. In the morning, she brewed coffee, left a cup by his briefcase. He didn't drink it. He kissed her on the forehead before leaving, like a habit not yet broken. But his lips never touched skin, just hovered, then turned into the front door without a word. That was worse than shouting, worse than slamming doors. It was the sound of something quietly being buried. Later that day, Mira returned to her journal. She wrote, "Betrayal doesn't need a bed. It only needs 1 second where you stop thinking and start needing." She sat there for hours staring at that line, because she had been trying to name the moment it all began. But the truth was, it didn't begin with Ryan, or with the reunion, or even with Eliot being gone too much. It began the night she stopped being seen, and accepted it. It began when her silence grew teeth, when her loneliness found a voice louder than her vows. And what haunted her most wasn't the act, it was how easily it happened. One drink, one long look, one memory that felt kinder than the present. One moment where she didn't say no. And the worst part, not that she did it, but that she knew she could have stopped, and didn't. Now, the house was filled with little silences. Not arguments, not accusations, just pauses between footsteps, unfinished sentences, unsent texts. And Mira knew, a person doesn't cry over what they lost if they think they can still have it again. She had cried, she had called, she had broken something Eliot hadn't even known was fragile. And now she lived in the ruins of her own hesitation, trying to explain to herself why something so fleeting had taken so much. But no explanation would change what she saw in his eyes. A man who didn't need to hear the details, because he'd already heard everything he needed. In the sound of her voice. When she said nothing at all. The days didn't scream, they whispered. Mira woke early every morning, like some instinct inside her refused to let her sleep past the guilt. She moved through the house like a shadow of someone who once belonged there. Cleaned the kitchen, washed clothes that weren't dirty, cooked breakfast Eliot didn't ask for. He came down the stairs each day in silence, shirt tucked, hair damp. He would nod when she handed him a plate of eggs. Not a thank you, not a smile, just a nod, as if that was all the acknowledgement she deserved now. He ate quietly. Mira sat across the table but never with him. She sat near, but not beside. The chair between them always remained empty, like a reminder of what once lived there. Conversation, warmth, routine. He left for work at the same time every day. Came home at 6:40. Not a minute earlier, not a minute late. Mira waited. Dinner was ready by 6:15. Always enough for two. Only one plate touched. They moved like ghosts, occupying the same space, but not the same moment. No one said the word. No one mentioned the thing. Not the betrayal. Not the hotel. Not Ryan. Mira found herself opening her phone, staring at the screen, trying to draft the right message. The one that wouldn't sound pathetic, or rehearsed, or like it was just another plea from someone who'd lost the right to ask for anything. On the 6th night, she sent it. "I'm sorry, I hate myself more than you could." It showed, delivered, instantly. But no dots appeared, no reply came. She sat on the couch with the phone in her lap, staring at the screen until it dimmed. Then she opened the journal again. Wrote, "He didn't write back. And that hurt more than if he had told me he hated me." Because silence carries weight. Not like screaming, not like slamming doors. It's heavier, quieter, like walking underwater. The next morning, she tried again. Coffee in his mug, the one with the tiny crack on the handle she always meant to replace. He didn't take it, just grabbed a travel thermos and left. The silence that week was loudest in the small things. The drawer he stopped closing gently. The text he sent to say he'd eat out. The way he stood further away when brushing his teeth. No confrontation, no breakdown. Just a quiet disconnection, as if Mira's crime had not been the night itself, but the fact that she had severed something neither of them had realized was holding the whole thing together. She didn't cry that week. Not outwardly, but she did look at herself in the mirror before bed each night and whisper, "Please forgive me," not to Eliot, but to the version of herself who used to be enough. And to the version of Eliot who used to believe she never would have done this. Neither version answered, and neither one felt like they were coming back. Because forgiveness isn't owed, and sometimes, the absence of punishment is its own kind of sentence. That week, Mira learned, you can say sorry, you can hate yourself, you can mean it with every atom in your body, and still not be forgiven. Because forgiveness isn't something you receive. It's something you have to earn back. And some bridges, once burned, don't even leave ashes behind. The house felt too big when it was empty. Mira wandered through it like a museum of former intimacy. There were still photos on the wall, ones she hadn't dared to take down. A jacket Eliot left on the coat hook, his scent still faintly clinging to the throw blanket on the sofa. 3 weeks. That's how long it took him to leave. He didn't slam the door. He didn't make a speech. There was no confrontation, no apology from either of them. Just the quiet logistics of departure. Clothes gone, drawers empty, his razor missing from the bathroom shelf. He left behind only a small cardboard box on the kitchen table. Inside, her wedding ring, and the towel she'd been wrapped in the night she called him from the hotel bathroom floor. Folded, clean, still soft. Mira sat beside it for almost an hour, fingers brushing the fabric like it might speak. But towels don't carry meaning, only memory, and this one carried too much. That night, she returned to the bathroom. The same tile, the same mirror, the same space where she'd once whispered into the phone. Voice broken, trying to rewind time with tears. She brought her phone, not to call, but to listen. The phone call had been automatically recorded, thanks to a cloud setting Eliot had once enabled and never turned off. It had uploaded to their shared archive. She had found it by accident. Or maybe fate just knew she needed to hear it again. She sat on the floor, pressed play. At first, only static. Then her voice, fragile, panicked, gasping. Then Eliot's, calm, tired, holding something back. The conversation was short, just a few minutes, but she listened to it like someone trying to study the exact moment a plane crashes. Hoping if she heard it again, she'd hear the second before impact and scream, "Stop." And then, there it was. His voice, clear, gentle, devastating. "If it hurt you that much, why did you still do it?" Mira paused the playback. The silence after that question rang louder than any answer could have. She stared at her reflection in the mirror. Same woman, same eyes, but she didn't look like someone who had been cheated on. Or someone who had cheated. She just looked tired, so tired. She remembered all the excuses, the mental gymnastics, the journaling, the apologies, but none of it answered the question. Because there was no answer. You can't undo a cut just by hating the blade. You can't rewind a night by crying in the morning. She looked down at the wedding ring in the box. A small, cold circle, once worn like armor, now just a relic of who she used to be. She didn't pick it up. She didn't cry. She just sat there, playing the call one more time. Just the final sentence. Just the echo of a man who had already known what her tears were trying to say. That some betrayals aren't about sex, or opportunity, or even revenge. They're about vacancy, about feeling like a ghost in your own marriage. And choosing anything, anyone, that makes you feel momentarily solid again. Mira closed her eyes, listened again. If it hurt you that much, why did you still do it? The question remained, forever unanswered, because forgiveness might be earned. But trust, once broken, doesn't rebuild. It mourns, and she would live with that mourning, not as punishment, but as proof that she remembered. That once. In a single phone call, she didn't just confess a mistake. She killed a marriage. And the woman staring back at her from the mirror wasn't someone she could believe in anymore.